So I get back to the round table and get the discussion with the student leader at Desa University, that is Alois Lavan Otieno. And this pertains, of course, the young people in the country who equally have been highlighted or well captured in the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force report, which was unveiled by the President and the Opposition Chief Raila Odinga on Wednesday. Thank you for joining me, Alois. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Let me start with this particular message that was sent by a viewer. And this is what he said. Perhaps, where is the place of the youth in this BBI draft apart from the tax holiday? The young people in the country need jobs and inclusion in leadership for them to develop and be positioned for leadership tomorrow. We should stop imagining that all youths are businessmen. With regards to now the other aspect that we are going to be coming to, about the perception that the report has captured, is that in the event it comes to the business end, then there are going to be proper opportunities for the young people in the country. But then again, not all the young people in the country are businessmen or want to venture into the field of business. So how do we classify that and perhaps expand the base for the young people to be an all-encompassed people, not the selective sort of what the report has highlighted?
Thank you very much. First of all, I think that the tax holiday is very important, like you said, especially for young people who are looking to get into business. However, I think, just like the viewer said, not all people are businessmen, actually. A lot of youths have actually tried getting into business and suffered not being able to achieve this. I would have expected a more radical approach maybe by the BBI, something to do with, if you look at the numbers that we have, over 70% being under 35, I would have expected the government looking at this projection to be able to say, okay, employees maybe who are above 55 years of age, then can we give them a good enough package for them to leave their workplaces, and the government still is able to take care of them through the pension scheme. And these opportunities now open up for young people.
You, of course, are a university leader at Desa University. It's one of the most recognized universities in the country. And young people, despite making up the lion's share of the population, equally are feeling disenfranchised and under-acknowledged and appreciated by the government in terms of prioritizing their needs. Yes, they have the numbers, but then again, onward now from the setting of the foot after this report into a new dawn Kenya, as what the principles called the coming together of the president and the opposition chief. What is the perfect positioning of themselves, and how do they square themselves in the square now going forward to the new Kenya?
I think, first of all, the most important thing is, as young people, we need to, again, take the opportunity to move and start driving this direction. So move from just being participants and giving our input, but actually taking ownership of this document and try to push it towards a way that it can benefit us as young people. And one of this is by setting up conversations such as this one. But also for us as university leaders, I think we need to start having engagements at our universities regarding this BBI, talk about issues that maybe weren't captured in there, and seeing how maybe we can add other things that will be able to impact the youth. For example, I don't think giving a tax haven for 7 years is enough. I mean, we need to have things like a business hub that actually trains young people to be able to make the most out of these 7 years. Because 7 years may look like a lot of time, but if you've not been guided well as to how you run your business and make those 7 years count, then I think it'll be important. But also one thing is, 7 years is, I think, too much to be able to give young people that the economy will take a beating if we're doing business and not remitting taxes for the next 7 years. So I think the most important thing is reduce the number maybe to about 5 years, 4 years, but then get young people into a business hub that will enable them to run their businesses properly.
That, of course, many have equally called it simplistic, and one that will perhaps have an impact on the economy. But then again, in 2015, when President Obama came to the country in that historic visit, he called on the young people to come up with ideas, innovative ideas. And he said, it's by their energy, it's by their innovation that the world is run in this particular manner today.
That's true.
He appreciated the role of young people globally. Therefore, in the new feature, in the new chapter of Kenya, how are you sculpturing yourself to be not only all the time the crying wolf, but equally be the policy-making process, since you have the numbers, and be in a very strategic position that will be mutually to the advantages of the young people and equally to the country?
I think the most important thing and the best way to do that is by engaging youth to get into more leadership spaces, become more politically aware, One thing that I keep pushing, for example, at Daystar University is for young people to take as many leadership opportunities that come their way, be it in a simple club role at the university. But this nurturing this leadership will be able, if we have the numbers, then you can command. But for now, we still seem to be the crybabies and the complainers simply because we're not taking up these leadership positions. But I feel a sense of awakening among us young people. I see a lot of talk of young people talking about wanting to get into leadership positions in 2022, myself included. So I think it's brilliant. And that's the direction we need to be heading to. But another thing is the young parliamentarians that we have in parliament really need to take, more than anyone else, take ownership of this document and try to push this youth agenda from that angle.
Do you feel that we have at least a very considerable number of young members of parliament elected? Of course, Babu Owino, who equally served as one-time leader of the University of Nairobi, the likes of Senator Sakaja, the likes of Gideon Keter, Nixon Korir of Langata, all are young parliamentarians, and not to forget Saboti, Member of Parliament, Caleb Hamisi. Do you feel they are doing enough in terms of representing the ideals, the beliefs of the young people in the country and fronting their agendas, their grievances to the policymakers?
First of all, I don't think the number is enough, but the mere fact that we can mention those members of parliament that you just mentioned shows that they're not enough. But aside from that, I mean, we see once in a while them talking about this on Twitter and on Facebook. But despite them being my friends, I usually call them out because I don't think at the moment they're doing enough for young people. I think despite them getting into parliament to serve their different constituencies, they need to take ownership and realize that the fact that they're almost, I would say, blessed to be the pioneers of the change of young people getting into parliament and so on. So I think they have their work cut out, but if I was them right now, I would start nurturing other young leaders and seeing how we can push a youth agenda and having as many young people vying across the country as possible.
Let's come to the issue of unemployment, because it equally, again, is a thorn in the flesh of the government, because more or less, to speak of the young people in the country, sticking time bomb if we are to relate that in terms of how they are unemployed. And what's even more burdening is the fact that universities across the country continue to channel out graduates who are unable to fit into the job market. And it seems that Kenya is a country that exports human resource to the countries, yet they're not appreciated in their country. If we are to turn around with the young people's fortunes, then we also need to set the economy, isn't it, to the path of prosperity. So how do we, in this case, double immediate fix to this problem, one on the economy front, so that it can be able to accommodate young people who are channeled out, the graduates, to fit in the job markets to get employed?
I think this is a problem that I always blame on universities. If you look at the Western world, it's universities that actually guide companies and organizations on what kind of employees that they need, what kind of, as you move towards a digital generation, what kind of work that they need to create, what kind of jobs they need to create. If you look at media, for example, like here, as it gets more and more digitized, it's universities that should be advising this organization on how to go forward based on the numbers that are actually coming out there. So I think universities also need to take their place in society by not just channeling out graduates, but having very candid discussions with organizations and then training the students in a way that actually works for them. If you look at most universities, you'll find universities that, despite us having Q guidelines, haven't updated their curriculums in the last 5 years. And 5 years now in the digital world is a lot of time.
Yes. Given that, and it still remains with matters that pertain to education, because we are in the midst of the competence-based curriculum in the country, and many believers, the stakeholders who crafted that idea into the policy working paper of the ministry, believe this is perhaps the way out from the crisis that we continue to witness, at least to have some sense of societal balance. Yes. When you view the CBC into the generation that is coming, do you feel they'll not be facing more hurdles or similar hurdles as you or me have faced after graduating from the university?
I think the CBC is a brilliant program, but I think as a country we're not being very honest with ourselves. We've brought in a brilliant curriculum, but we're not setting the right environment for these students who come out of the competency-based program. For example, I recently went to Good Testimony School to witness their 20-year celebration. And I noticed that the CBC is really working. You're seeing very talented kids doing ballet, doing all sorts of things, dances and so on. But as a country, do we have the kind of environment that will allow that student who is very good at dancing to be able to get employment after? And I don't think that's true. And so I think also as young people, however, we, and maybe like you and I, who are at a more advanced age than the young ones who are coming after us, need to start creating employment opportunities. All of us want to start the same type of businesses, but none of us is thinking outside the box, thinking futuristically as to, it may not bring in as much profit now for the next 3 years, but maybe in the next 10 years, this will create employment for hundreds of thousands of people out there.
Given that, and then when you mentioned the economy vis-a-vis the form of education that we have currently, which is being rolled out or tested, at the moment is up and running for that matter. And we have also having the issue that pertains, of course, the universities and the quality of education that we are according our students across the universities. Is that enough? Do we need to cure also that problem at the university level, as CS George Magoha has always hinted?
100%. And the thing is, we have so many private universities right now and not enough public universities, in my view. So if you look at the many private universities, the government can only do so much in terms of influencing the kind of curriculum that these universities teach. But I think we need to create an avenue, for example, that will allow the government to be able to help implement some of these things for the betterment of the youth. I remember recently when we had a few issues at Daystar University, we tried going to the ministry, but the ministry was almost handcuffed in terms of how much pressure they can put in terms of the university because of them being private. So I think the problem also is privatization, and most universities now being set up and looking as if it's more of looking for money and profit rather than actually providing education, which is what
you mentioned an important point, and I'll just be picking up from that point. And again, the ministry did also express itself on the matter that regards or is concerned about the mushrooming of universities in the country. It says are not playing any pivotal role in the rollout of quality education and well-sharpened, well-chiseled graduates who are able to fit into the market to roll out the, of course, development of the country. Is there a need we can cap that? And in your view, has it eroded to, again, the quality of the graduates that we continue to churn out, some being labeled or named as half-baked?
It's very true, and the truth is that most graduates actually do come out half-baked. For me, who runs a small business, whenever you're just looking for interns, you can already tell that you have to do a lot of work after to train this person who's coming out of university. But the problem is that most university courses are not very practical. So actually you find that diploma students actually come with that practical skill and end up working better. But the problem is now they don't get the pay that, for example, an undergraduate student should get. But I think our courses, just like CBC has been rolled out with the lower programs, I think even at university level, our universities need to have more practical courses and keep updating them. Every 3 years, I think, is important.
And when you look at the sort of the quality of education that we have, again, if I may just speak from the global perspective, or how it continues to have an impact across the global level. When you look at China, it's a country that depends more on the technical aspect of education. So as Germany, which is the biggest economy in Europe, China is a superpower at the moment, labeled just below the United States of America in terms of the free speech and more so the governance style. And there are many other countries too that have been able to pick up themselves from the dust, from the depths of despair to the great heights of hope through vocational training and education centers. Do we need to turn our attention there and perhaps get the pressure off the shoulders of the universities in an attempt to have or channel out people who are competent, are hands-on, are skillful, and not only fitting into the job market, but equally can self-employ themselves and others too?
I think, first of all, we need to change our mentality as Kenyans, because most people, if you take such opportunities to them, and if you speak to many parents about this and tell them, okay, take your child to this kind of training rather than taking them to university, then the mentality is already that this person is not going to do very well in life, this person may not end up being successful and so on. But I think we also need to look at ourselves as a country and ask ourselves, what is success, first of all, and how is it that now we can be able to improve this. And it's going to be a difficult conversation, because what it seems now is that you need a white-collar job for you to be able to make money, for you to be able to feed your family. But I think we need to start telling more success stories of people who have gone the other direction and are still making it in life. And we also need to look at that as to look at the importance of having these other skills as a country, because why should we all have cars if we have no one to repair them? You know
Yes.
what I mean? Yes, eventually. And that's where we're heading to if we're not careful. Yes.
When you mention that again, the fact that there seems to be a level of attention that the society is giving the white-collar jobs, and it seems that that is a priority point of the society, the sort of perception that you must be an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, and or the other professions that equally the society perceives pays well. But when you look at the likes of Victor Wanyama, he is basically not a product of the CBC, but it's talent that's paying. He's playing in London with Tottenham Hotspur. But my point is then, how do we kill that perception of the society and address the disconnect, the mismatch between the education, the society, and the job market?
I think that will have to start at a very young level. Those who are in primary school and high school right now, whenever people come to give career talks, I think schools, primary schools, high schools need to focus on not just those who have the white-collar jobs, but also look at young people who are not necessarily young people, but basically people who have actually made it going the other direction. So I think have more and more talks, engaging these people at a young age, because if you can capture them at a young age, then by the time they're leaving high school, they would have already made up their minds as to where they want to go. And I think the other thing, like I'd mentioned earlier, is just have many different hubs of such people. Take schools there for an entire day to just see how these things work, how they're making money, how business is. And I think this will really go a long way in making this happen.
There's also the other issue about the finance aspect and the Higher Education Loans Board statement, which again came out and will will be of great effect to especially public university goers. And that perhaps again many young people in the country, especially university students, feel, or who are unemployed at the moment but have graduated, feel it's going to be another burden on them when already there seems to be no job market to absorb them, at least to pay back that loan. Do you think the government's attempt is enough to address these issues and perhaps in one way or the other, hand on heart, call upon the government to help these people in an attempt to secure a job, then pay up that help, because it's again a case for the young people of double-edged sword?
I think, first of all, what the government should have done, instead of giving us a tax holiday, they should have actually looked at matters like...
Scrapping off help?
Exactly, scrapping off help. But not necessarily. I think help goes a long way in helping a lot of students. And it was unfortunate to see my good friend Babu, for example, talking about him not paying his help. Yes. The reality is help. Once you pay help, you empower another young person to be able to get an education. So I think one thing that they should do is maybe give a bracket of 5 to 7 years after you started working, then you can start paying your help loan. But I genuinely believe that help is a good thing. Help has gone a long way in getting a lot of people educated. So I think it's how we go about it. We should be more open as to how we allow young people to pay these help loans rather than scrapping it off as a whole. But I think it's very important. However, I always look at a situation where, just like we have free primary education, getting to free high school education almost fully, I think now we need to start having a conversation of how we can make university education free. But I think the best way to even make it free is by starting to open up such institutions that teach the technical skills and making those offerings free.
Okay, let's also talk about the role of the universities here and generally how they shape the discourse in the country, because in the build-up to the 1992 multi-party elections, the University of Nairobi and equally other universities have been at the epicenter of the movement that sought change in the country and pressured President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi to the extent that the international community intervened and said in the event there are going to be no changes, then there are sanctions and the economy is going to suffer. Then we had the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution. They seem to play that pivotal role, but though under another constitutional dispensation. I just want to source out what happened at the court when they wanted the university administration to address the issues of insecurity. They were being frustrated by the insecurity along the neighborhood of the university. And the subsequent action of the police was so grave, was so gruesome, and to some it was a breach or a violation of the student's right. Of course, that student who was butchered by the police. Do you feel that, again, the young people in the country, especially the university students, are perceived to be always on the wrong, cannot agitate for the right, cannot express themselves when they want to point forward their grievances? And how do we lift them from that sort of despair to have that or mirror that they are good people, they are desiring to see changes, and they want these issues addressed? So how do we encompass all that under one umbrella?
It's funny that as student leaders, we say that students don't riot, it's the police that riot. And you see such situations like JCOT make this actually seem true. The truth is, there's lack of accountability in many universities, especially in terms of leadership and governance. And you've seen many situations all across the universities, private, public, all going out there to say, okay, can you address these issues? But we see time and time again the police being used by the university leaderships to be able to butcher students as a way of silencing them, arresting leaders as a way to shake the rest of the students off. I think it's not an honest way, and eventually it's the universities that are going to pay a price for it. I think university students need to be able to, it's where you're getting your first sense of freedom, even as a young person. So I think they should be allowed to express themselves, and it's unfortunate what happened in JQuat. I mean, such things shouldn't happen in today's age, especially when we're moving from a police force to a police service. So I think just like the Building Bridges initiative pushes and speaks about the fact that all across the country, from top to bottom, no one seems to really be following the rule of law. Yes. So I think we need to start that way, with the university setting a good example that we can actually sit down and have an honest dialogue about where we want to take our universities.
Good morning, welcome back. We are into the second segment of the program here, discussing the young people in the country. Of course, what's contained in the BBI report, gender-based violence will be coming to the cases that continue to increase, especially at the universities, and equally get the sentiments of the student leaders on set. We are joined, though, along alloys by Lily Mwangi, who is the Vice Chair at Kenyatta University. Thank you, Lily. I do appreciate your time. And on my far right is Susan Gitari, who is the Women's President at Kiriri University. I do appreciate your time. Starting off with you, Lily, if you may express your sentiments on the BBI before we continue with the discussion, because we earlier on started with alloys, and how it might shape the future of young people in the country.
Thank you. First of all, I think the BBI was a very great idea, well thought of, and a bit timely when we needed peace in the country for us to move on. But I think when it comes to young people, we have a bit of challenges. When it comes to representation, it hasn't been really, we don't really have a formula as to how the young people are going to be incorporated, especially in terms of inclusivity. Also, I think that it has some good things for the young people, from the tax holidays, maybe to the fighting of corruption, because we are among the people who are really affected by corruption due to lack of opportunities. So I think because it's a report, and the president said that we should read it, and we will probably come up with recommendations. And I think that, as what Alois had said earlier, I think the Kenya young parliamentarians need to play their role in spearheading the talk on the youth agenda when it comes to representation. If you see, the women have been really fighting for their spaces, and according to the report that has been recently produced, you can see they've been really factored in terms of representation. So we need representation, but representation is not enough, because not all of us can be in parliament at the same time. So we need more youth-friendly policies. We need more, when it comes to youth unemployment, when it comes to the education sector, also when it comes to business. We need policies that really favor the youth to be able to get into, the businesses, to get into employment, and also to get quality education.
Okay, Susan, if I may come to you, you equally are a leader. And again, your position informs that you pretty much sit at a very significant position. Taking a look at the outside or the external environment from the periphery, do you feel that you initially, of course, were dejected as the young people in the country, but do you feel that the new sort of chapter that Kenya is seeking to write on the next future is likely going to be one that is accommodative, hospitable for the young people in the country?
First of all, let me say, for more than 30 years, Kenyans have been fighting or have been spending their time dealing with declining economy or slow economy. But now this chapter of the BBI report has come to provide solutions. And some of the solution, let me emphasize more on the youth empowerment because that is where I lie.
Yes.
I feel it's a good idea in that if I, Susan, want to start a business, I will not be under so much pressure that I will have to pay taxes. I have that period for 7 years before starting paying tax to KRA. So that will make me mature and grow in business. The other thing is that if the BBI will be adopted, the president has the mandate to maybe have a non-profit organization which will support the talents and sports. Recently, we just Nani Kipchoge proved us that no human is limited. So I feel the BBI, if it will be adopted, that is, it will have more benefit to the youth in terms of talents, in terms of businesses, and will grow the economy together.
With regards to that, and then let's listen, Alois, Susan, and Lily, to what the University of Nairobi President, that is Anne Mvurya, said at the Bomas of Kenya when the report was unveiled on Wednesday by the President and the Opposition Chief, Raila Odinga. Here are her sentiments.
Excellency, sir, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am humbled to speak here before you to represent the youth of this great country. We recognize that it is a new dawn for Kenya. And this being a new dawn for Kenya, it's a new dawn for the youth. And the youth appreciate this opportunity. Firstly, I would like to talk about opportunities for the youth. The BBI report, as we have had, has brought about the bottom-up rule, and we want to say thank you because this will ensure that the youth, who are the majority of this country, are able to be recognized and have opportunities to advance their lives and their careers. We also would like to talk about the youth fund and the 30% procurement rule. This has been there, but unfortunately, it has been used by the politicians and the people in power to ensure that the youth do not get opportunities. Therefore, Mr. President, it is our plea as the youth that whenever any case of corruption, that the youth are not given the opportunities that are there, because policies are there, implementation is the problem. We are kindly requesting that the youth are put first, and we are requesting that something is done whenever corruption issues against the youth are faced. Secondly, I would like to talk about shared prosperity. The youth of this country are very innovative, and we thank you for the opportunities that the youth of this country have been given. But we want to ask that as the BBI report is talking about incentives, can these incentives actually reach the youth? Because a majority of times we are told about incentives, but these incentives do not reach the youth, and the youth cannot grow themselves, and the youth remain to be the poor, yet we are the majority in this country. Lastly, the youth have faced a lot of extrajudicial killings in the past, and it is something of concern that the women also of this country have faced femicide issues. Day in, day out, we hear about young women who had potential, young women who could have been something in this country, being subjects of domestic violence, being subjects of violence in general. We are kindly requesting that we, the youth, and we, the young people of this country, to be taken as if we are people. Because whenever justice is denied, it is justice that has been delayed. Justice delayed is justice denied. So we are kindly requesting that enough is enough. Let the youth of this country feel that they have a president. You have always been a champion for the youth. We are asking you to continue championing for the youth. We have talked about divisive elections, and we as the youth of this country have been the ones who've been used by politicians to bring about violence. We are saying we are tired and we are not going to be used by politicians for violence. We want a country that is peaceful so that we can be able to grow ourselves and grow the people that we want to be in this country. Your Excellency, we have been excluded for the longest time. We are calling for a round table. We hereby ask you to give us a round table, a youth round table, so that as the BBI process is continuing, as you're building bridges within Kenya, build bridges with the youth. Give us an opportunity for us to also tell you more and more things that we need from you. Thank you. Asanteni sana. God bless Kenya.
Okay, that is Anne Mvurya, who spoke at the Bomas of Kenya on Wednesday. She mentioned 3 key issues. I'll come to them. extrajudicial killings, we were in that discussion before we went on break, cases of femicide, and of course the sort of implementation of the existing policies. Now we have another paper which is subject to amendment. But first, Alois, let me come to you on this. She called for a roundtable discussion with the president to talk common, that is tete-a-tete discussion, sort of the face-to-face discussion. Do you feel the president will heed what the young people will say or present in that table in the event the sort of the first-hand meeting between the young people and the president does happen in the country, or happens in status for that matter, if it were to happen?
The problem with this country is a lot of times we have dialogue, and rather than, especially with us student leaders, let me be very candid, when we're invited to such meetings, for us it's what are we leaving State House with? But I think it's come to a time where this meeting that Anna's asked for example, is very timely, it's important, it needs to happen. But I think one thing that if such a meeting happens that we need to come out with as young people is a written commitment, and we need the president to speak out after that meeting to speak to the country about what he has agreed with young people and what he's planning to actually do with young people. So I think rather than just having a discussion, we need to come out with, for example, a mini BBI, a mini handshake report between young people and the president as to his commitment and what he's planning to do. I would want to have a very honest conversation with the president. For example, we know that aside from him being a president, he comes from a very entrepreneurial family. So as a family, also as a business family, what are they doing to be able to impact and create more employment for young people in the organizations?
Okay, if I may come to you, Lily, then one of the other important aspects that Anne did mention are the continuous cases of femicide in the country. And we saw what happened to Ivy Wangeshi in Eldoret in Uasin Gishu County. So are the other cases across the country which continue to mushroom. How do we as a society then get out of this deep hole? Because there seems to be a problem that is societal, a problem that affects the women and the girls, and a problem that if not maintained or prevented in future will have consequences on the growth of the society.
I like to liken the cases of gender-based violence, like the case of tortoise and a hare, where the tortoise is the force, the rules that we have, the rule of law, and now the hare is the perpetrator. So we always constantly trying to chase the hare, but the tortoise is too slow to ever get to the hare, and the hare is too fast. So we are always getting into cases of femicide, cases of gender-based violence, including both gender.
Yes.
And these are cases that are in the rise in this country for reasons that stem back from even our cultures. So I think that in as much as we want to solve this problem, let us look at the root cause of this problem. Let us start it from upbringing. Let us start from, we have been growing up in a very, in an African culture that tends to glorify the male, the male gender, unfortunately. So these are some of the issues that now we are trying to get off from, but we really have to look at the root cause. Also, in our forces, in our police force, and mostly the Ministry of Interior, they need to look into how this gender-based violence can be solved, I will say singly.
Okay, let me just pause you. Continue. Allow me to pick this call from one of our callers from home. That is Barasa calling us from Nairobi County 047. That is here in Nairobi. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Morning to you. Habari asubuhi.
Iko salama.
Yes, if you can have the speakers up on in studio, Mr. Director. Yes, go ahead please. Sasa nakusikia.
Ningependa kuuliza swali. Kulingana na hiyo BBI. Sisi kama vijana. Ni lengo gani lenye unaweza weka ili at least tuondokewe na hii shida ya kutokuwa na kazi?
Okay. Yes, please, if you can lessen the volume of your television set so that we can have the communication effectively.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That was Barasa calling us from Nairobi County Hopefully he was addressing the point about the BBI should contain issues of importance to the young people. Yes, go ahead, you had a point.
Yes, so I think that you also need to set up, in some of the police stations, there's gender-based violence desks, which I think need to be strengthened, such that these cases are handled not only, not by the police directly, but there are police who are trained to, be able to handle these cases of gender-based violence. I also think that in the BBI reports, there is the issue of, training on parenting. So these are some of the issues, because we are evolving as a country. We are evolving, even because of the internet and everything. So we're getting more globalized. And so I think that in much as we're evolving, we also need to, educate our parents, get educated parenting, where the parents are able to get in link with the children and know what is going on, so that we can inculcate this culture from when you're growing up, to know that you need to respect a man, you need to respect a woman, regardless of the gender.
Susan, if I may come to you, how do we curb the cases that continue to sky up of gender-based violence, to use that word, because it cuts across both women and men are affected at the university level and at the society level?
To add on what Lily has just said, I think we should, justice should prevail. Let's put more effort. The way we put effort in curbing corruption, let us put effort in saying no to gender-based violence. Let us strengthen the justice. If someone commits such a crime, let him or her be a subject, or be something to say that we have done this because of this. Yeah.
Okay. Alois, coming to you then. Another important element that Anne did underscore, or underlined for that matter, is what underpins the young people in the country. The political class does enjoy seeing a mammoth of crowd that attends the political rallies, and then they use the young people for violence. And Kibra is just a perfect example, a classical example in just concluded by elections. And she said that will end with the young people. How do we end it? Because we need to uninstall that software from the young people, that if a politician comes, then he will use you. Number two, if that ends again, it means that we need to open up and create more opportunities for the young people, so that they are not vulnerable because of being idle and susceptible to be used by the politicians. So how do we double address and seal that loophole?
So firstly, it's easier said than done. I don't think one person can simply say that it's going to be over and it's over. But I do think having such statements is the beginning of that change. Personally, I went to Kibra during the by-elections and I witnessed that for myself. But you realize that the problem is actually unemployment. You find, for example, 4 young people are operating one boda throughout the day. So clearly this is not enough to make the money. So if an opportunity comes where they can make 500, 1,000 bob to be a goon, then they'll take that opportunity. But I think we just need to focus on, I remember despite the NYS activities having been kind of the problem coming out as corruption, the NYS programs across the different slums are actually bringing a lot of fruit into the communities. We had reduced cases of violence, reduced cases of muggings and so on, but it's because youth had actually things to do. And there's a lot that the youth can do, for example, in these slums, but we need to take the initiative and at a ward level, right from the ward level, start empowering, for example, MCAs to be able to create such opportunities, cleaning and so on. But for now, if, for example, the county government, we had the senator for Nairobi speaking about it the other day, calling 3,000 goons that are working for Governor Sonko. Well, the reality is these were goons before, but now they've been given an opportunity to work. And we had some of them speaking and saying that it's true we used to be goons, but now we're simply employees. I think we need to have such situations. We don't have to have the white-collar jobs. Just create opportunities, clean the streets, safety, let's ensure that there's no muggings. These young people know the people that actually go out to mug. So if you have these people providing security for the youths, not necessarily arming them, but just being around, patrolling to ensure that the neighborhoods are safe, neighborhoods are clean, children, for example, leaving school, being walked back home, creating simple jobs that will be able to curb this, I think will go a long way in doing this. And if you look at a lot of these so-called goons, they actually have a lot of leadership potential. We saw in Kibra one of the aspirants.
Yes.
After him losing the elections, we actually saw him being the chief security, for His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga right at the front. So I think also just pushing them to get into leadership and realizing that this influence that they have can actually put to very good use.
Then coming to the issue of leadership, if I may come to you, Lily, is well-crafted. There needs to be a good outlook of the young people so that you can take up the leadership positions, sit at the policy table, and not only craft laws that affect the current generation, but the coming generation, because we are laying down the laws that not only affect the contemporary issues, but equally the future issues. We need to be futuristic. So how do we model a young crop of leadership in this country, not only at the university level, through education, but equally at the society, to be mentored and have that general mind shift from the current status that we are?
I think first we need to start with upbringing, how we bring up our children back at home, how we take them up into leadership, right from the house level up to the school, the university, and also the society. Also, I think in terms of role models, because right now, if you see. Most of our role models right now are people in politics and in leadership positions who are serving right now. So what they do really impacts what the younger generation will do when they get there. So if we start to get a model of leader and a crop of leadership, even from those who are already in leadership positions, who can be able to guide the younger people into leadership, who can be able to provide good mentorship into leadership, will go a long way. Also, we can look into mentorship, because we always talk mentorship, but it's rarely implemented. If we can have avenues where people sit and talk, from the older generation, they tell us what they did to liberate this country, to what we are going to do, and finally to what the vision of the young people is, we can go a long way. And finally, I think that we need to get a generational mission, because if you see in the times of Jomo Kenyatta, their mission was to liberate this country from the colonialists. Then we came into multipartyism. So we need to know, we as young people, what is our generational mission? Because this country has already been freed from so many things, but we have so many problems. The same problems we were facing at independence are the same problems you're facing now. So we need to come down and look at where the rain is beating us as a country and look at the way forward. So let us have a generational mission. Let us hold our leaders accountable. If they give us these promises at the election, we need to hold them accountable to what they do. We need to hold them accountable of our funds and also of the promises that they make, so that we can see this country growing into what we want it to be.
Okay. Susan, Lillian does point out an important element, the link here between Kenya prior 1963 and Kenya 2019. In the build-up to the independence, it seemed that all the common goal was about getting the independence, unifying Kenya, and have an independent country. 2019, we seem to be having one of the most admired, transparent, and eloquent, expressive constitution admired across the world, but we are in deep-seated problems politically, socially, and economically. How do we galvanize all these and have the one common goal, agenda, to have in 2019 so that we can be able to address our problems as of now?
I think, first of all, we should be able to understand our rights and understand what we are supposed to do as Kenyans. And we should be able to, as what Lily has said, we should hold our leaders accountable of what they are doing. Let us not wait to see being maybe used as young people. Let us understand what you're supposed to do and do accordingly. Yeah.
Okay, Alois, if you may recall, or many of us, of course, do recall at the time in the build-up to the 2008 presidential elections of the United States of America, the bulk base of President Obama's campaign team was young people. If you may recall, the likes of Josh Earnest, who served as his communications secretary or press secretary at the White House. He said, I picked this young guy. He was in Iowa. He was in jeans and a T-shirt, brought him to the White House. He became a father over time. He married. And he was a gentleman at the end of the day. It means then that we can put into good use the young people in the country, away from the negativity in the minds of the policymakers in this country, who want just to see them in mammoth of crowd, pay them 500 Kenya shillings. At the end of the day, it doesn't do much, and then the perpetual continuity of poverty continues. So how do we empower them for the future generation, for them to have future life that is better, well off than where they are today at the moment, because they seem deprived and acknowledged and appreciated and often sidelined by the government?
I think it's a radical approach that I mentioned earlier, and I think I'll start pushing that agenda, that people who are almost getting of age need to make way for us as young people to take these jobs. I think if young people start working from a young age, then you start being encultured from that young age. You start learning how things work, you start learning how to do things. And I think that will be key to achieving this. But again, it has a lot to do with upbringing, like the rest have said. I think us as young people, as we start our families, we need to come up with this agenda that what are we as Kenyans? Are we hardworking people? If we're hardworking people, then can we start teaching our kids that from a young age you have to be hardworking if you're a Kenyan? So having that one common ideology, right now I think our agenda as young people should be get as many people into leadership, as many young people as possible. And I think if we push that agenda, we have the numbers to do it, so we will be able to do it. But I think also the problem is we've been used for a long time.
Yes.
Rather than wanting to sit on the table, we've agreed to be on the menu many times. Mm-hmm. But I think it's time that we ask for seats on the table, enough seats, and eventually not just have a seat on the table, but have well-documented commitments and have us as young people championing those commitments that we have.
Okay, and yes, go ahead, please.
I also beg to agree and differ with Alois at the same time, because I feel that as young people, no one is going to get us from home and bring us to the table. We need to fight for our space, and nobody is going to give us this space. If you interact with the leaders who are there right now, who are young in their time, from Raila Odinga, Martha Karua, and the rest, they'll tell you that they had to fight for their spaces. Nobody gave them spaces as young people. So what I would say is that we won't achieve all this if we don't unite as young people. Because what happens is if we go lobby, me, Alois, and Susan, they tend to take Alois and then give Alois what he wants, and then sideline the rest of the youth, which is the majority. So what we do, if we get the platform, we tend to fight for our own interests rather than the interests of the whole group. So until we realize that we are all in this together and we can't rise until we are united, that is when we are going to have a united front, and we can only fight from a united front for our spaces.
Welcome back. We are into the last segment of New Day Kenya, 32 minutes past 8, and we have some 28 minutes to go before we wrap things up here on Feel Good Friday on New Day Kenya. The number is 0791478990. The hashtag on Twitter is New Day KE. The short SMS code is 40920. Susan, coming to you after this break. That is Anne Vuria, talked about the issue of the shared prosperity in this country and the incentives. But again, you reflect back and pedal back a bit, and the president at some point when he appointed Moody Awori to the board said, nyinyi wacheni kunisumbua, and there were some claims that young people have failed him in the other state appointments that he made and appointment to the board in the respective state parastatals in the country. How do we wash away that sort of dented image among the young people?
I think the young people should not just wait for even if they are given the opportunity, they should not wait to the opportunity to come to them. You should start something that will enhance you or make you get to where you want. You can't wait for president to give you opportunities and then tell you to come and grab them. You have to grab them and be that person who is aggressive and grab the opportunities. Yes, you start small and you'll have them.
Mdogo mdogo too, yes, as you go up the ladder. Alois at the center. The issue about the aggression here is about fighting for what you want, what's yours, what ought to be yours, but you feel a bit blocked from, or there are hurdles on the way, but still a lot of issues shrouded in secrecy. But then the aggression point here is that when you look down the history of our country, young people often have been at the forefront, at the front line. You look at the Mau Mau uprising against the British colonialists at the time before the 1952 state of emergency declared by the then district commissioner, and to the 1991 multi-party democracy battle against the suppressive Moi regime. Young people have been always at the forefront. How do we then reshape that perhaps into some form of diplomatically approachful young people in the country that want to use the 2010 Constitution as the avenue to reach the next desired destination?
I like how you framed the question, and I agree completely. I think we can't always depend on a forceful way of doing things. I'm one person who believes in going for diplomacy first, but also I think as young people and especially as university leaders, we're losing comradeship, and comradeship is almost dead. I think many times we've seen that the political class will only react or respond to our issues when we go out there on the streets and we're a bit aggressive. So I think, one, like I said, we always need to embrace diplomacy first, try sit on a round table and discuss these things. But I think also as university leaders, we need to go back to the days where if we're not heard, and we'll make sure you hear us, and that's through demonstrations and so on. I think if we go that direction, then we will get heard. So it has a lot to do with unity again, because personally, as Daystar University president, if I take my students to the streets, that's not enough. We'll be clobbered and we'll go back to the university. But I think if we decide, for example, all across the country that there's no university education going on until, for example, a part of the BBI report in terms of the youth is actually passed in Parliament, it'll be passed the next day. So yes. I think that's how we need to look at things.
Okay. Lillian, if I may come to you, Lily. She also mentioned the issue that regards the extrajudicial killings in the country, and young people often feature a very top at the list of those who have been extrajudicially killed by the security agents or authorities in the country. And yes, okay, we have a call. I'll come and pose that question again. Okay. We have this call from John calling us from Bungoma County. Good morning, John.
Oh, maybe one of them, Abdi.
Bushere.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So wageni wetu hapa na wasalimia habari zenu.
Tuko sawa, asante.
Asante sana. Wacha niseme namna hii, vijana wana shida bwana Abdi. Vijana wana shida. Hebu angalia, shida ya kwanza ni kuona ile maandamano kwa vyuo vyetu vikuu, mauaji na dhuluma fulani zinatokea pale sana.
Okay.
Hizo nataka kuzikemea kwanza kabisa. Nataka kuzikemea. Kitu cha pili nataka kusema namna hivi.
Okay.
Vijana wakiwa katika vyuo vyetu vikuu, unajua tunawatarajia kuwa viongozi wetu wa kesho, wanasiasa wetu, wahubiri na kadhalika. Na mimi nasikitika bwana Abdi kuona wanaandamana kule, wanatupa mawe kule, hata wanapigwa marisasi kule, wanakufa. Mimi kwanza nataka kusema poleni sana vijana.
Okay.
Na ningependa hatua madhubuti zichukuliwe kuhakikisha yale mambo ambayo yanasababisha vijana mpaka wanaingia katika ile hali yanachukuliwa hatua zake mapema kabla hayajafanyika.
All right.
Na jambo la pili ningependa kusema namna hivi, kwa upande wa BBI.
All right.
BBI iko imara sana, na najaribu kuifuatilia, na ninasema natoa wito kwa hawa vijana ambao wako hapa na waambie wengine BBI kile kitu ambacho ni muhimu zaidi. Vijana, kama mnanisikiliza popote katika jamhuri letu la Kenya,
okay,
muiname na kusome ile BBI report. Kitu ya muhimu ni kuisoma, muelewe, mjue ni kitu gani kiko pale ndani kizuri, mjue ni kitu gani kibaya kiko pale ndani, so mkitoa uamuzi, mtatoa uamuzi wa busara.
Okay.
Ikilinganishwa na 2010.
Yes.
2010 tulipiga kura vibaya, kwa sababu kama angalia kama sehemu ya Central, angalia kama sehemu ya Nyanza, angalia kama sehemu ya Rift Valley. Mimi nina hakika na ninaambia hao vijana.
Okay.
Hiyo kura watu walikuwa wakipiga kwa sababu wamemuona pale Kibaki. Sasa hivi Kibaki yako wapi? Hiyo kura walikuwa wakipiga kwa sababu wameambiwa na Raila, kwa sababu wameambiwa na Ruto. Na hiyo ni makosa kabisa. Nataka leo vijana mpige ule uamuzi ambao mtachukua.
Okay.
Mchukue uamuzi ambao mmesoma nyinyi wenyewe, mmeelewa nyinyi wenyewe. Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Much appreciated from the county of Bungoma in Mulembe Nation. Lily, I was on the point of the element that regards extrajudicial killings in the country, and part of, or when you look at the large bulk of those who make up or feature the topmost list of those who have been extrajudicially killed in the country, allegedly by the security agencies, are young people. Carlington Minor is just microcosm of the other young people who face the brutal nature of the Kenyan police service, not a force, as is the case with Uganda and Tanzania, si askari jeshi ni police service. But then there seems to be these cases that continue to rise, and Andy expressed that in front of the president, the security agencies, and we are under a new constitutional dispensation. Do you see the need for more reforms within the police, in the police, to perhaps restructure, to perhaps ensure that all these problems that continue to bedevil the security agencies in the country are addressed?
Yeah, first of all, allow me to comment on what John has
Yes,
just said.
okay.
And he's really highlighted a very important point to the youth, especially, which is read the BBI. And there are, messages going on, and they're saying form ni kujisomea, kuelewa na kujiamulia. So I think it's the high time as young people, even from what we were discussing earlier with Alois, from how do we fight from a united front. I think we can only fight if we have information. If you see what happened when we were getting into the multi-party democracy, the young leaders then, from James Orengo to the rest, went back to the grassroots and empowered the grassroots with information on when we're talking about multipartism, what does it mean to us as as a democracy? What does it mean to us as young people? And that is how they were able to fight. So if you look now, look at what is happening now, you see that when you go back even to our universities, people who are learned to the university level don't even know what the BBI is. So we need to, get information fast so that we can be able to fight. And I always tell young people, most of these policies are not going to affect the people who are making them. They're going to affect us and our children because they are living. They are living off stage, and they're the people who are, the greatest beneficiaries or even the greatest victims of the same policies. Coming to extrajudicial killings, I feel that it is a very unfortunate state to be talking about extrajudicial killings in Kenya in 2019. I believe that we've come a long way from police brutality, and we're still seeing police brutality. And I think it is not even more of a reform issue, it's more of an attitude issue. You find that most of our police know that the only way we can actually implement anything is through force, and even most of the Kenyans otherwise. So you see, this is something that needs to be inculcated from the if their curriculum has already changed. So this is something that needs to change from the attitude. If the students go on rampage, this is not only a police issue. You see that they face brutality from, business operators, boda riders. So this is something that is an attitude from the Kenyans who think that if we have to go on demonstration, we actually have to break things. Also, even in terms of the students, we need to have more of peaceful way of demonstrating and a peaceful way of voicing our grievances out, to make sure that if we go on demonstration, we're not seeing other people's businesses being looted. We're not seeing people, and this is from an attitude issue. This is exactly what happens, exactly what is reflected even in our election, during our election period. And that is why if we have to fight and if we have to demonstrate, we actually have to break things. This is an attitude that we have to clean off as Kenyans.
Well, Susan, are you concerned that there are these cases of extrajudicial killings of especially students, university-going students, and how do we shift from that negative attitude to perhaps a positive one, where, for instance, the student who was clobbered by the police when he was down and was never violent, was never armed, was it because they were informed by perhaps the nature or the outlook of his hair and the hair he kept at the time?
I think the society should understand that when we go to express our views, we don't mean to harm or to cause harm. We actually, when we go to demonstrate, we are trying to air out our issues and to find a way that we will get help. So I think there should be a way or good channels of passing our grievances. And the society should also understand that we are not good people. Students are not good, bad people in that case. They are not bad people. We just want to fight for what we deserve. Yes.
Well, we also talked about the issue about the gender-based violence, about, of course, a week ago that happened here in Nairobi. We have that clip. this happened in a supermarket. It was in Kajiado, I presume, county. Yes, Lillian. And equally we had another one which happened in Komarok. Well, both of the gentlemen have been arrested. They're in custody now facing assault charges. And it's a grave concern, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If you can look at what is happening right now, I feel that you can see it almost took 3 to 5 minutes before the lady was actually rescued. And I think this stems back from the patriarchal nature of our society. It's unfortunate that we can see this in 2019. And it's something that I feel that we have very many good enough men, only that negativity is glorified in this country. So you find that we're seeing more cases of negativity, and you're not seeing, cases of, people who are able to treat women with, and any gender with decorum. So what I feel is we're doing enough in terms of policy, we're doing enough in terms of, paper, but we need to get into the implementation, and we need to actually get into the, I believe this is a psychological issue. Nobody can just, start smashing a woman left, right, and center if they don't really have a psychological issue. So if we can face this from the psychological point of view and look at what is actually ailing the society, such that if we have to do anything, we have to go through the violence route. And this is an issue that I think needs intervention from all corners of this country, from the policy makers to the religious leaders, to the psychologists, and to the parents, to the society at large. Let's come together and declare that we want a state of no violence. And that is how we will, transformably, and everybody takes responsibility wherever you are, whether the cameras are on you or not. You believe that you have to treat the next person with the decorum that they deserve.
Yes, Alois, your comments on that before we finish up?
I think we lose the discussion when we choose to focus it as femicide rather than violence as a whole. The thing is, most of the times violence against women is really brought out there because of the nature of, obviously, this being a patriarchal society. However, I think we need to condemn violence as a whole. There's a lot of men who are also suffering in silence, being clobbered by women, either at home or at work. However, I strongly condemn, and I think following up to that story, we saw a situation where the next day the lady had already dropped any charges and the man was released.
Before there was a follow-up.
Yes, but this is obviously because organizations put pressure on their employees not to report such things, obviously because of the nature of the brand, trying to protect the brand. But I think they need to start realizing that an organization that condemns violence, for example, ends up being more powerful than one that tries to suppress someone who has actually been oppressed. But one thing that I always hear is not just the oppressor will be punished, but also the person who is accepting oppression. So I think as a society, as a whole, not femicide, we need to just condemn violence as a whole.
Yes, Susan.
The video is so disturbing, first. I think we should learn to appreciate other people, whether you are a male or a female. You should understand that the one you are accusing can be your mother, can be your sister, can be your grandmother, can be someone close to you. You should imagine that is someone who is close to you, that you're doing that to him or her. So this is, I condemn this, and it should not be happening, and justice should prevail.
Okay. We equally had Kenyans who expressed themselves on the continuous cases that are on the rise of gender-based violence in the country. Of course, they are equally concerned, and this is what they had to say.
Kwa kusaliwa kwetu sisi rika yetu, wanaume walikuwa wanaheshimu wa mama. Hawezi kumpiga ovyo ovyo. Lakini kwa siku hizi hawajali. Anakupiga tu na anakutukana na anaenda. Kwa hivyo kwa siku hizi vijana wa siku hizi wanadharau sana wa mama. Sasa ndio inafanya wanawake hawana maisha mzuri ya kutosha.
Yaani kama mwanaume badala ya kupiga mwanamke, afadhali waelewane tu. Amuulize makosa na warekebishane kuliko kupigana na kufanya vitu za aibu mbele ya watoto.
Vita sio mzuri serikali inatakana itoe ulinzi kulinda kila mtu, si wanawake pekee. Juu hata mwanaume anaweza kudhulumiwa, mwanamke anaweza kudhulumiwa, hata mtoto, kila kitu.
Most of the violence is as a result of poverty, and poverty has been brought about by issues of corruption and poor governance. And the government can help by by having institutions working. There's no point of having institutions and then they're not working at all.
Tunasema si fiti kupiga dema ama kuchapa mwanamke. Kama kuna conflict, try find a way to resolve it, but si kumpiga.
Well, those are the sentiments expressed by Kenyans with regards to, of course, the continuous increase in the cases of gender-based violence in the country, and that's where we come to an end here on the program New Day Kenya, Day 29 of November 2019 on Friday, Feel Good Friday, the last Friday of the month of November 2019. We live to see it on another day. That will be next week in December 2019. Thank you to Susan. Susie, I do appreciate your time. Alois, thank you so much. The Alibert here, and Lily Mwangi, who is the Vice Chairperson, Kenyatta University.